My name is Micah Russell. I'm from around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I am a second-year doctoral student in the Psychometrics program at Morgan State University. Honestly, my entire collegiate journey has been stepwise. When I finished undergrad, I realized that my interest in psychology was really more so in the numbers, as opposed to my undergrad had a very clinical basis to it, and I didn't really like that. I liked the research. That kind of led me down. I talked to my advisor in undergrad, and they said you can go either quantitative psychology or psychometrics. And quantitative psychology was a lot of sitting around with numbers and thinking about what the numbers do, or psychometrics, which is the application. And I think that, research needs to have an application. There needs to be an end goal, and that's kind of why I ended up here, because there's very few psychometrics programs on the East Coast. I think there were like 4. So yeah, that's kind of that's why I ended up at Morgan. So a lot of the research that I've been working on here at Morgan, we've been using a lot of VR in what we've been doing. Particularly with my master's thesis, I did a project where I was working with math assessment and VR. So a lot of psychometrics is devoted to content of questionnaires and assessments. What are you putting into a test? What are you looking at when you're actually taking the test? I wanted to take a different route, different approach, and I wanted to look at methodology. So my use of VR with psychometrics was presentation of a test. Could you test someone in a VR environment? Could you create an assessment in a VR environment that could help them engage better with the questions or engage better with the content itself and get better results? Even just using, I think I used SAT questions from the practice tests that were publicly available. So I didn't change anything about the questions themselves, I just presented them in a new way to see if we could get more meaningful results. So psychometrics deals with content, but it also has to do with presentation and how you're giving the questions to people. So I work with my advisor in this space quite a bit. We do a lot with the VR and testing. So a lot of what I'm doing with him, we do with virtual simulations of fire. And we want to create more immersive ways of studying fire, because the problem with human behavior in fire as a study is, they call it survivorship bias, and it's basically everything that you study about fire comes from people who survived fire. So you can't really understand how people are behaving in the moment, because you're not dealing with it in the moment, you're dealing with it after the moment. So we started looking at VR as a means of testing these things by creating virtual fire that people can navigate, which then puts them at no risk of harm, but also lets us see what they would do in certain scenarios. So this space, it allows for us to do in-person testing for projects of those natures. We also do a lot online, just to try and get a wider net of people. But I know, especially with regards to this space, I ran all of my master's thesis participants in here with the built VR room that I had, and another one of his students did their master's thesis in here, just because we have the space and we have the dividers that we can run multiple people at once. And it just gives us a space to actually have the room that we need to do these VR experiments. I think one of the best things about the psychometrics program at Morgan State is the freedom that it gives you to work in other areas. Psychometrics as a discipline is very interdisciplinary. It can be applied to a lot of things. The work that I'm doing with my advisor is very fire heavy, we've done a lot of work with fire protection engineers. The education research that I did for my thesis, I'm actually working with another professor over in the School of Education and Urban Studies to look at VR as a means of teaching as well. So it has afforded me lots of opportunity to meet with many different kinds of people. And I know that there's other students in the program that have also said that they are working with multiple different kinds of people in multiple different industries, just because the Psychometrics program allows for us to seek out those opportunities and work with others, because that's the nature of psychometrics. My time at working with my advisor, I have been fortunate enough to be published 3 times. We're actually working on a 4th right now. It's still under review. That being said, I'm only in my 2nd semester in the doctoral program, so all 3 of those publications came during my master's degree, which it's a big thing. So in that time, did the very first one that I ever was a part of, published a paper basically just confirming all of the fire videos that we had created. We used those fire videos for a lot of our other research. And basically the gist of that paper was, we went in and we created all of these virtual simulations of fire. We had 2D, we had 3D, in fires burning within simulated rooms. So living room, kitchen, office. But those created a repository for us to draw from for all of the other research that we decided to do. So like the second paper that we published, we were looking at people's decision-making framework. It was a VR simulated game kind of thing where people would be presented with a video and then asked, what would you do if this was what you saw? So it started them at the end of the hallway. There was a door at the other end of the hallway. Sometimes they saw smoke coming out of it because the fire was burning with a lot of smoke. Sometimes it wasn't. But after seeing that little clip, they would make a decision. Do you call 911? Do you go to investigate? What do you do in this situation? And then depending on their answer, it would show them the next clip. If they decided to investigate, for instance, it would put them closer to the door at a later point in the fire burning, and then it would ask them again after viewing that, what do you do? Do you barricade the door? Do you continue to investigate? And it would just, if you chose to keep investigating, you would continue to see the fire burning at various viewpoints, and they would continue to make decisions in this way until they either investigated too much and it would cut them off. They made a decision that was to get out of harm's way, so i.e. call 911, get out, barricade the door. And then we took all of those results and we analyzed them to see, given the instance, I believe it was given the instance when they first saw the fire, what did they choose to do and how would they react? And that gave us an understanding of people are seeing these fires burning at different rates, burning with different smoke levels, and how are they reacting initially? Is it, well, let me go check that out, or let me get the fire extinguisher, or let me get out of here because it's dangerous? And how are they going about making those decisions? Because we didn't just build VR fires. We worked with fire protection engineers over at University of Maryland. We'll just cut it off there. We have a program, it's called PyroSim, and it basically lets you put in all the math associated with fire so that you can have what we dubbed numerically accurate burning fire, opposed to like what you would see in a movie where it looks great, but it's not necessarily true to what you're experiencing in real life. So that first paper that I talked about was looking at, can we make fires that burn like they would in the real world? Can we make that in a VR or a 2D situation? And can people still recognize that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing? And then those fires that we created and we verified, we then used for the other papers and the other studies that we ran and presented. The biggest thing that I would say if you're interested in psychometrics, 1, make sure you like the numbers because it's a lot of numbers. So if that's what you're into, definitely look into it because it's a very application-based outlet for the numbers. It's not just theoretical, it's this is how we can use these to define things that were previously undefined. You can quantify the unquantifiable, and it's really cool. In regards to faculty, if you're looking around for a psychometrics program, find a professor that's interested in something that aligns with you, even if it's not necessarily the psychometrics itself. It allows you to build on that interest with the degree that you've now chosen. So for me, when I came in, I had the big interest in education and testing, and can you present it in a different way? And so I found my advisor, and he pointed me in the direction of the one professor that I had on my thesis committee. And I do a lot of work with her now with regards to education and VR and testing. So just find people who are in line with what you're interested in, because psychometrics is so applicable to everything that you'll be able to take your courses and you'll be able to go out and do things with it